Yep.
The meeting of the Finance Committee of the Brockton City Council for June 21st, 2021 will come to order. Welcome, councilors. We have a short agenda. Several of these items are annual renewals of revolving accounts, which we do every year. Would the clerk please call the first agenda item?
Ordered, that the naming of North Manchester Street also have the honorary name of Ruth E. Silva Way, in recognition of Ruth E. Silva, who is a resident of the city of Brockton and has fostered over 250 children on North Manchester Street. Invited Ruth E. Silva, F. Peter Gaskins Jr., Raymond Rosario, and Jeffrey Souza.
Come on in, gentlemen. Welcome, gentlemen. Please stand by the podium. That microphone is live. We welcome you. We're glad to have you here. And if you'd like to make a statement, or Councilor Thompson, if you'd like to make a statement.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. Councilors, today I am seeking that the North Manchester Street to also have the honorary name of Ruth E. Silva Way. To me, Brockton is ultimately about family. It's where I've chosen to raise my family, and it's where many of you have chosen to do the same. Ruth Silva not only raised her family on North Manchester Street, but also over 240 boys who needed love and guidance. And today, we have three gentlemen who are going to speak on the worthiness of Miss Silva for this honor. We're going to starting with Peter Gaskins Jr. Peter, please.
Thank you, Councilman. I have known the Silver family for over 3 decades. We always refer to Ruthie as Nana. It's great to go by her house, always has treats, always has food. Very humble, very humble. And there's so many times I've been there just hanging out with her, eating lunch. She got a phone call from one of the 240 boys that she did foster over a 30-year period. And they always, thank you, I'm in a better spot. They drop by. They send her stuff, Mother's Day, cards, everything. And I think this would be a really nice honor for her and also for the city of Brockton. She also raised four children, 2 Navy men also, and also 240, over 240 youths also. So that's what I was saying.
Hello, how are all of you today? It's good to see you. I guess I'm just here to speak on behalf of Ruth Silva. I'm one of her former foster boys who was born and raised in the city of Brockton. And as a result of her care and her love, not only did I succeed, I prospered as well. I went off to college, I earned an education in AutoCAD, and pursued a career in fire sprinkler systems for the last 7 years. But it was through her guidance and her knowledge and her love that all that was possible. I grew up on North Manchester Street. I don't know, that's home to me. I don't know how else to put it. I can't think of that place as a foster home. It's my home. When I go back there, all the people in the neighborhood see me and recognize me as the little kid who grew up there. They see me now as an adult, and they realize that I was the same snot-nosed little kid that was running up and down the street riding his bike every day. And Ruth Silva, not only did she make it a point to raise all of us boys with love and care and respect, she made it a point to get to know our families and, if she could, help our families as well. So that neighborhood didn't just become known to us foster boys, it became known to our families. And there'd be times that I'd drive by there with my mother when I was older, and she'd go, "That's where you lived. That's where Nana Ruth's home was." And it just always, that place will always be special. And then I think naming the street after her is just a great way to tell the city that this is a special part of Brockton. And people from outside the city could recognize that when they come here if you guys were to just name it after her. It's hard to describe the impact that she's had taking care of over 240 boys. I see them all the time. I am still close to many of my old foster brothers. We still have very close bonds to this day that were formed in that house, on that street, playing games of football, playing games of basketball. She was the one that made sure we had the equipment. If the kids were hungry, come get an ice cream, come get a snack at Ruth's house. That's what we knew it as. All my friends knew that that's where we would go meet. You'd see a pile of bikes on the front yard. We would all be in my house hanging out. Because it wasn't a foster home, it was just plain old home to us. And if you guys could change the name of the street after her, it would be a great honor for her. It's something I know she truly enjoyed because she truly loved this city. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Raymond Rosario, and I am a former family resource social worker for the Brockton Department of Children and Families. I worked in the Brockton office. I actually worked for the department just over 34 years, and in the Brockton office for just over 30 years. I met Ruth in 1992 when she had applied to become a foster parent. She completed the training, was assessed, and immediately opened. And it's been off to the races since then. The Brockton office depends greatly on Ruth. In fact, excuse me, the entire Department of Children and Families, depends greatly on Ruth. She is a support to not only to our office, but to other offices. She's been recognized more times by local municipalities, state governments. She's won multiple awards for the work that she's done for the community of Brockton. Her ties to Brockton are very deep as far as foster care. I mean, she raised her family here, but she established relationships with most of the major players in Brockton as far as when it came to foster children. The Brockton courts, the Brockton school departments, many of the counseling and other service agencies all had relationships with Ruth. They all knew that when a child was placed in Ruth's home, be it for a night, a week, a month, or years, that they were going to receive the top quality care that they would get in any department foster home. In fact, more so. And more so because Ruth treated or treats her foster children as her boys. When you go into her home, in her kitchen, there's a calendar, and over that calendar is a picture of Ruth, surrounded by other pictures of the foster children that she's had in her care, and it's captioned Ruth's boys. She's phenomenal. I mean, I can't think of any more honors that could be bestowed on her. But I think this honor, because of her connection and ties to the city of Brockton, would be the one that would be the pinnacle for her. In closing, there is one thing that I do have to disagree on, the number of foster children that she's had. I think it's closer to 300. That's 300 lives that have been touched by her. 300 boys that had the opportunity, that during the most tumultuous times in their life, through no fault of their own, needed to leave a home, and virtually start all over. There was never any differentiation. There was never any favorites. She treated her boys all the same, that they were her boys. I can't say more than enough, about Ruth. And if this is something that can happen, I think, I know what Ruth's reaction is going to be, and I can guarantee it. She's going to say, no, I don't deserve this, because that's the person that she is. She is one of the most selfless people that I've ever known. I worked with several hundred foster parents, during my career in the department. And I would rank her in the, top 5. And that's a very select group because I am a very select person when it came to my foster parents. Only because I know what was going to be expected of them and the impact that they were going to have on their children coming into care. Whenever a child was placed in Ruth's home, I never had to worry. My supervisor never had to worry. Social workers didn't have to worry. And she always made it a point to reach out to the boy's family. Hi, I'm Ruth. I'm the woman taking care of your son right now. Tell me about him. What's he like? Here's my address. Here's my phone number. Feel free to call me anytime. If you have any questions about me. So.
Councilor Thompson, anything more?
No, I'd like to thank all of you gentlemen, Peter, Jeff, Raymond, for coming before this council to speak about Ruth E. Silva and what she meant to you, what she meant to the city of Brockton, and I just want to say that this honor, I believe, is fitting a woman of this caliber. So, Mr. President, I'd make a motion to recommend favorably to the full city council this order of naming North Manchester Street honorarily Ruth E. Silva Way.
Second.
All right, Councilor Razak.
Just on the motion, I just want to thank Councilor Thompson for bringing this before us. She sounds like an amazing woman, and I can't wait to meet her. So it's not easy being a foster parent, and we all know that, and especially in the city of Brockton. So this is amazing, and I love the testimonies and what that you're here to really speak on. It's really touching. So I think this is an amazing woman, and I know that we shouldn't have a problem supporting this. This is what Brockton's all about. So thank you. Thank you, Councilor Thompson.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service to Brockton and in that agency that means so much. Anything more? If not, all in favor of recommended favorably? All opposed? Motion carries. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Ordered, acceptance and expenditure of a donation in the amount of $3,000 from Easton Festival of Trees to the City of Brockton Police Department. Invited Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Emmanuel Gomes, Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, councilors. Chief Gomes could not be here this evening, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have on his behalf. This is indeed a $3,000 grant. As I did note to you in the email I sent last week, the specific use is actually for bulletproof vests for the canines. Recent events that we've seen and unfortunate losses in the canine ranks elsewhere in Massachusetts have underscored the need and the importance for having this equipment. So this generous donation will help outfit our canines with bulletproof vests.
Move to recommend favorably. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Seconded by Councilor Azak. Go ahead, Councilor Azak.
So on the motion, just a quick question, Mr. Clarkson. So Easton's Festival of Trees they fundraise, so they raise money for, correct? It's a nonprofit?
Yes, and so that's the event, but the actual charitable organization is called the Easton Charitable Trust, Inc.
So they can donate to whatever they want?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Anything else, councilors? If not, all in favor of recommending favorably? All opposed? It is a vote. Councilors and people watching, the next agenda items 3, 4, 5, and 6 are our annual reauthorization of revolving funds for various purposes. Item number 6 is going to require an amendment, which Councilor Lally will speak on. If you wanted, you could take these collectively, have them each individually read, and then have the motion done when we get to number 6 by Councilor Lally, or we can go through them separately, whatever is your...
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will not be offering an amendment this evening.
You won't?
No, there was some problems with how it would have to be set up. So a new order will have to be filed.
All right. so, well, let me ask you this then, are you going to be moving to table that one, or?
I will be moving to recommend it favorably this evening, and we will table it next week when the new order is presented.
All right, then we'll go through them individually. Item number 3, Madam Clerk.
Ordered that the City Council authorizes the reauthorization of the Comcast revolving fund for fiscal 2022 from all cash receipts from Comcast franchise fees in excess of $675,000 pursuant to the cable license contract, and that further, that the expenditure from this fund shall not exceed $750,000 without further appropriation during fiscal year 2022. Invited, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Joseph Miranda, President, Brockton Community Access.
Mr. Clarkson, Mr. Miranda, you can blame me for inviting you tonight. It's not that I don't think you probably could have been somewhere else, but I wanted the council to be able to say thank you for all that BCA has done for us, especially during the budget hearings. You know, your staff was great. I interacted with them prior to the hearings, and we really appreciate what BCA brings to Brockton. So, again, that's primarily why I have you here, although you may want to tell the council a little bit about plans that you have and the revolving account. It's up to you.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for the invitation, but I did not get invited. Someone saw it and took a picture of it and told me, hey, they spelled your name wrong. So I looked at it, it's like, oh, I was supposed to be there today. So that's why.
That wasn't me, by the way.
And it wasn't, no, it wasn't.
Then you know the old story, the invitation's in the mail.
Yeah. So I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad that person sent me the text message regarding the revolving fund. For about 1 year now, I've been working with the mayor's office to try to get some of that money for the capital money for the improvement. We haven't got anything, and Troy is here. We've been constantly in emails back and forth. It's still going back and forth. We haven't received anything to do any the work that we said we was going to do. The rest of the money, it comes every year. It's $675. That's coming $675, no problem. So,
Mr. Clarkson, anything?
Sure. So Mr. Miranda described, I think, the process correctly. So out of the annual receipts from Comcast, the city has an MOU with BCA that was negotiated by Mayor Rodriguez. The balance of the money stays in that revolving fund and can be spent at the discretion of the mayor up to $750,000 a year. And so BCA has provided the city with a list of capital improvements they'd like to make. The mayor and I recently went to BCA and took a tour, so we're working through the details on which projects should be funded immediately and which funded more long-term, but I am confident that we'll get to that finish line and provide additional funding over and above that $675,000 to BCA.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Well, just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a point of clarification, that MOU was actually done under Mayor Harrington back in the days when I did it, but it was through Mayor Harrington back in 2007 or so. And what was actually agreed upon was that you know, the 75% of the total cable revenue that came into the city went to BCA, and the other 25% would be set aside for equipment cost, equipment improvement in the 3 organizations that we have within the cable domain here in the city: the public schools, BCA, and Massasoit Community College. But I guess one of the issues that we're having, and some of us are lucky enough to produce a show through BCA, and I've been doing it long before I was a city councilor or even elected as city councilor in the city. And it's going into, I think, close to 30 years now that we've been doing that stuff. In the past, there was quite a bit of a lack in terms of upgrading the system to a point where, you know, we were dealing with, you know, the 21st century of cable broadcasting in the sense. You know, everything was still in the old-fashioned ways, and things were done as molasses in the sense. In the last couple of years or so, they've been able to accomplish quite a bit, and people are noticing that even the videos that we're getting From our meetings, in the sense, it's like night and day in terms of the comparison of what existed versus what's there now. But they are in need of those funds, and those funds are designed to be used exclusively for cable-related expenses in this community. They're sitting at within the general fund in the sense, but they need to be used for those purposes. And if they have the need to improve the equipment and bring it up to date to a level where they feel comfortable that it should be brought to, I think we owe it to BCA, and owe it to the schools to make sure that those funds that are just sitting there, they can't be used for anything else other than cable-related expenses. I think we need to make those funds available so that they can move forward and get the things that they need to get done. Because they've got some great plans, at least from in conversations that I've had with the staff in the building itself, of some improvements that will not only improve from within what's taking place in that building, but also on the outside of the building to kind of, help us in this whole downtown revival in a way. But I think we owe it to BCA to kind of expedite those funds so that they can move forward with this thing, because, you know what? Those funds can't be used for anything else. It's not like we're saving it for anything. We might as well use it for cable-related things. So I urge you to somehow work with them and try to kind of, put whatever pressure you need to put on to get those things moving, because just sitting somewhere, I don't even know if we're getting interest out of that money, to be honest with you. It makes absolutely no sense. So if it's cable-related, we ought to put it in cable and at least improve the lives of folks that watch these programs religiously. We are fortunate in this city that we actually have BCA, because we don't have Channel 4, 5, and 7 covering anything in Brockton unless it's bleeding. Unless the police lights are on and the firefighter, the fire department lights are on, that's when you'd see the Boston media covering Brockton. And I think BCA is our version of that in terms of bringing some sights and sounds into the homes of Brocktonians. So I think we need to put a lot more of an effort into it to make sure that they do what they need to do for the ratepayers and the taxpayers in this community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? I had one question. Who audits Xfinity or Comcast to make sure that we get the right amount? I know we get now 5% of their revenues, but who actually audits that? Because their rates always go up. Let's face it, folks, it seems like they go up every year. So how do we know that we are getting our full measure of what's owed under the contract?
I'll take a stab at that, and happy to have Joe follow up as well. I speak from not just my Brockton experience, but having overseen cable contracts in other communities. They do provide, and they're required by law to provide, a regular report that actually provides statistics on numbers of subscribers and the revenue generated from that. And so based on those reports, we're able to cross-reference and see the money that's coming in versus the money that they're taking in.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and that's something that's done through Congress. It's not just in Massachusetts, throughout the whole U.S. And I believe a member of this council also had questioned that before, and we sat down, and she was able to grab the information and actually see exactly how much money was coming in from Comcast to the city, because like the memorandum says, BCA is supposed to be getting 75% of that money, but BCA hasn't been seeing that money for years. And that is why on that account, you'll see over $1 million sitting in there. And if the city's getting $1 million, why is BCA only getting $675? Why are we not getting 75% of whatever's coming in? Not sure if this is the right people to talk to or how we can resolve that issue, because that's one of the issues that we've been having. We've been having it for years.
Not to belabor the point, but I think what happened is when finances got constrained, I think perhaps they raided that money coming in to help balance the annual budget, and hopefully we'll get away from that. We'll get to helping BCA. So, Councilor Iannieri.
I just have one comment. I got it right here, thank you. Just one comment I want to make, because I think I and quite a few others have been in the city for a long time. We've had cable for a good many years. It was something that came in under the late Mayor David Crosby, if I'm not mistaken. He's the one that brought it forth, and the building was built on Main Street. But The one thing I always find, and I always find it very interesting, is the fact that, yes, when you do strike a new contract and they, show you just what everything's going to be and what fees are going to be, it's always amazing how the fees change, though. I mean, now we got, 10% for seniors, and I'm a senior. And when I relocated back last October, I had to go through the whole process of setting up anew at my place, and all of a sudden I'm at a different rate with the 10% at 136 something, and already right now I'm up to 144.80 because there's always little fees that they just don't tell you what it's all about. And cable's been doing that for years and years and years. And God rest my father, if he was here, he'd be saying it's a mess of you know what, but you have to have TV. And it is. It really is. And that's what people say, because people say it goes up not just once a year. It sneakily goes up every few months if you watch look at the little fees. And I have no fanciness of TV. Yeah, I have a 50-inch TV, but other than that, I'm the old school. Channels 5, 4, 6, 7, whatever. I don't worry about all this other hoopla that's on there, hula or whatever it is. I don't have time for it, but it's interesting. I mean, because that's what you hear from people is, oh, cable just goes up when they want to, and they do. They do. Sad to say, but they do. Just want to make that comment publicly. Thank you.
Motion to recommend favorably back
Second.
to the full city council.
Motion made, properly second, recommend favorably. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
By the way, councilors, Councilor Monahan unfortunately is working again tonight with emergencies. I neglected to mention that at the beginning of the meeting. Madam Clerk, item number 4.
Ordered that the City Council authorizes the reauthorization of the Demolition Revolving Fund for fiscal 2022 for the sole purpose of helping to fund cost in connection with demolition of buildings in the City of Brockton. The Demolition Revolving Fund shall receive the receipt of payments of all demolition charges of the City of Brockton. Expenditures from the Demolition Revolving Fund shall be made at the direction of the building superintendent with written approval of the mayor, provided that not more than $110,000 may be so expended from the Demolition Revolving Fund during fiscal 2022. The building superintendent shall comply with the reporting requirement of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E1/2. Invited Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, James Plouffe, Building Superintendent.
Good evening, Mr. Plouffe.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Annual renewal,
It's just I think it's formality, but yes, sir.
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city council.
Second.
seconded, and on the motion, Councilor Rodriguez.
Mr. Wolf, I just have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Let's say you demolish a property, and it costs you, I don't know, $150,000 to demolish that property, and then that property is sold. Especially with what happens, it goes back to the BRA in some instances, that we're giving these properties back to the BRA. I don't recall seeing funds coming back into the city for the demolition costs. Has there been funds coming back to the city? And where it does, shouldn't it not be coming back to this body to accept those funds and then be put into the general fund?
Well, yes, the first answer is yes. We do receive funds back from demolition of properties in some circumstances. If a property is demolished and the property is then taken for taxes by the city, we cannot collect on those debts. The city absorbs the funds we spent out, and they sell the property with a clean title.
So you were saying that, okay, we spent $200,000 demolishing a property, and they owe another $100,000 worth of taxes. That means that $200,000 that we spent demolishing that property becomes zero?
That's unfortunately correct. Now, in other circumstances, when there's a responsible owner of a property, and they pay the taxes either during sale or just to pay off the lien, then we will receive that money back into the funds. Now, there have been 2 examples where we've actually received money back from the BRA upon transfer of properties, and that was 121 Main Street, and I believe 47 West Elm Street. where we expended a large amount of money and received not the full amount, but a good portion of it back from BRA upon their sale to a private owner.
But I don't understand, to be honest with you. We're spending a ton of money to take down these properties at the taxpayer's expense.
I've been told by the city treasurer that's the state law. That when we sell a property at auction, we have to sell it with a clean title, clean MLC.
In some cases, we're selling these properties not even covering the cost of what it took to bring these properties down.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Anyone else? No further discussion. Been a motion properly made and seconded. All in favor of recommending favorably? All opposed? Recommended favorably. Item number 5, Madam Clerk.
Ordered that the City Council authorize the reauthorization of the vacant and abandoned buildings revolving fund for the purpose of maintaining the abandoned building registry, as well as the closing, boarding up, and care of vacant and abandoned buildings. The vacant and abandoned building revolving fund shall receive the receipts of payments of fines and fees for the registration of vacant and abandoned buildings. Expenditures from the vacant and abandoned buildings revolving fund shall be made on the authority and direction of the Brockton Building Commissioner, provided that not more than $250,000 may be so expended without further appropriation from the vacant and abandoned buildings revolving fund during fiscal 2022. The Brockton Building Commissioner shall comply with reporting requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. Invited Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, James Plouffe, Building Superintendent.
Mr. Plouffe, any overview you want to provide, or?
I have a known question that's going to come out, and I just want to let you all know that 326 buildings right now land on the registry.
326?
326. And that's down from well over 400 a few years ago. The funds we do use, we used it to demolish the building across the street, 26 School Street, just this past year. And to the delight of Councilor Rodriguez, we did receive all of that money back.
That's good then.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Plouffe, how often is that vacant building roll audited, or how often are we checking that? Because I just an anecdotal story of a constituent reaching out to me stating that she had about 2 to 3 years of fees for having a vacant building in which she occupied during that whole time. Now, we were able to work with her, and I believe all that money was returned to her. But just how do we prevent that in the future? How often are we looking at this list and making sure that buildings that are purchased and then occupied are taken off that list?
It hasn't been done too often, but I have a new inspector that's doing my code enforcement, just started, and I've had him go by, I gave him a list of all of those. And he's supposed to be going by these buildings and double checking to see if they're vacant or not vacant. One of the problems we've had with the vacant registry in the past is banks will register the buildings foreclosed, and we register them on the system. And then a year goes by, 2 years goes by, they pay their fee, but then they sell the property and no one ever checks into it. And by ordinance, it's the responsibility of the owner to double check to see if their property is listed or not when they buy a vacant property. Unfortunately, a lot of these buildings that are on there have been reoccupied in the past number of years and haven't been notified to our office. Our office hasn't been notified. So we're trying to catch up with that. I have 3 inspectors. I've talked to the mayor. I'm going to be talking with the CFO, possibly to look to hire a part-time person that would be dedicated to the vacant building fund and would pay pay out of those receipts for that part-time person. So we're discussing that possibility. I can't say for sure that it's going to happen, but that's something I'm looking forward to discussing with the mayor and the CFO.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes.
Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Plouffe.
Good evening.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for the number.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to Councilor Thompson's inquiry. I think the treasurer-collector could help you with that, because if they sent you a notice whenever a municipal lien certificate was ordered, Usually that's ordered prior to a refinance or a sale.
Yes.
And so that could trigger some kind of an inquiry. Is this property on your list?
Yeah, certainly. We could definitely work with the treasurer on that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Just a quick question. The vast majority of the owners of the 326 properties that you have as vacant properties in the city, are they mostly out of the city, or there's some within the city as far as the ownership?
I don't have that information. I can look that up for you, though, and see if I
It would
can
be,
find it.
yeah, it would be good to know, just to see if the owners of record are residents of the city or outside individuals.
I will say that there is an inordinate number of banks that own properties that are vacant. Whether or not that's a majority or a supermajority or, very little, but there are a lot of banks that own properties.
Now, what's your relationship with the law department in terms of going after these banks to make sure that they either assume the responsibilities of these properties, put them on the tax rolls, meaning, put bodies and residences back into those properties, or us taking over the ownership of those buildings?
Well, taking over ownership of the buildings is a tough one. They are still privately owned, whether it's a bank or if it's a private person living out of the city or somebody that passed away.
But are taxes being paid for those properties?
I'm sorry?
Are taxes being paid on those properties?
Sometimes, sometimes not. And the tax office will go after those properties for tax foreclosure if they're not being taxed, or not being paid. There is a mechanism in the ordinance allows for us to fine per day up to a certain dollar amount.
Right.
Personal experience, I sat there in my office for a week straight, 6 to 7 hours a day, writing out fines for probably a dozen properties, because each fine has to be written each day on a separate notice and sent to the owner. So it takes a significant amount of manpower if we were to start finding places that were not paying up on regular time. A lot of times the increased amount of the fees that the city council enacted does get people's attention. We start with, say, $150 for the first year, going up to $300, $500, $1,000, and then it ends up being $1,500 a year that a fee is assessed. And eventually a lot of those get paid. And the amount of money we have in the bank account right now is evidence of that. So we do get that.
If you have 300 properties and you charge them $1,000 a piece, that's $300,000. It might be even worth getting somebody on a full-time basis to be the chaser of these things, because it doesn't have to come out of the coffers of the city. But it's not just the issue of the abandoned property, but it's the fact that it's the plight that it actually brings to the neighborhoods in the sense. I remember when I was downstairs, in the mayor's office, one of the things that we did put in some ordinances in the books to try to go after some of these landlords, to look at them and say, you know what, you can't just kind of board up your building because you're hoping that the economy will get better and you can kind of turn around and sell this later on at a X, Y, and Z, that you make X, Y, and Z money in it. But the point is that, if we need to stay on top of it, I think it's worth, putting somebody in place to go after these individuals and not spending, 6, 7 hours of your day to do that.
Right.
Because it pays back the city in the sense.
Yes.
Just by going after, I have absolutely no love for the banks, because they have no love for the residents as well. If they were basically on the other side of it and they're coming after the residents, you better believe that they're going to come after them. So we too should go after the banks.
Sure.
If they're going to own all these properties in the city, then they'd better be paying up, and have the tools in place to go after them, and go after them heavily in the sense to make sure that they do what they need to do. Either fix up the property, sell it off, or you're going to continuously get fined, because we do have the fines in the book, and go after them that way. Because I think we can't sit here and go, well, we might violate this, we might violate that. Let it be. Let's violate whatever we need to violate, because it cleans up our city, and at the same time, we can get resources back into this community.
Thank you.
No, if you need somebody to sponsor that order, I will be more than glad to do it.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
This is going off topic a little bit, but just to give you an idea of what we do, we have a code enforcement meeting every Thursday morning to go over blight and issues that we have in the city. Part of that is the law office, and the law office is involved with receivership. Receivership is going after these blighted properties through the courts to either force the owners of the buildings to make them habitable again, or give the city or the BRA or whoever the receiver is the ability to make the effective repairs and then possibly even take the property. So that there is a program out there to go after blight. Unfortunately, we don't, as the vacant building registry doesn't have any language, or I don't believe there's any way to go after a property just because it looks bad, unfortunately. But that's why the incentive was put into the ordinance of those high fees. Make it very distasteful for someone to leave a building vacant. Unfortunately, the big banks don't care about that money, and they'll pay up after a number of years. So.
Thank you. You're welcome. Anyone else?
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full
Second.
city council.
Motion made and seconded to recommend favorably. All in favor? All opposed? Unanimously recommended favorably. Item number 6, Madam Clerk.
Ordered, in accordance with the provisions and stipulations of Section 53E1/2 of Chapter 44 of the Mass General Laws, that the City Council authorize the renewal for fiscal year 2022 of the revolving fund for revenues from parking fine violation fines up to and including the amount of $250,000. Invited Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Eric Atkinson, Executive Director of Parking Authority.
Councilor Lally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was supposed to be an amendment tonight for sort of an adjustment of this to allow the parking authority, with permission from their board, to expend up to $100,000 more a year for capital expenses. The problem is there's a little miscommunication. The problem is this is going to require the mayor to resubmit because we cannot increase the amount of money that they're spending. There was a little miscommunication when we were talking about it. So right now, you know, it's at the council's will what to do with this specific item, but this item with the appropriate amendment will be refiled. They're going to bring it to the clerk's office on, tomorrow morning. I'll sponsor it again, and it will be up in front of us, a week from today. And at that time, I will move that we act under suspension of the rules and deal with this, deal with it that evening, along with the other funds. So, if there are any questions for Mr. Atkinson related to the topic, he's here now, and he said he'd be here next week as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's a good plan. If we know an amendment is coming in to increase this for $350,000, and we have Mr. Atkinson here, are there any councilors that would like to engage in any questions or?
I would just like to note it's $250,000 with the option to go up to $350,000 with parking authority board approval, if I'm correct. So they don't have carte blanche to expend up to that amount, but with board approval, in the interest of, if they have to do some additional capital expenses, they would have that option.
For the benefit of the public, why don't you explain the need for the amendment and the increased funding, and we can get that on the record if you would, please.
Sure. Well, first off, any money that's collected from parking ticket revenue goes into the general fund, and then every year the revolving fund is funded by the first $250,000 that comes out of this fund. We use that money for salaries and equipment relating to enforcement, throughout the authority. Last year, I believe there was an issue when it was first presented, and an amendment was made by Councilor Nicastro, if memory serves right, because the expense piece of the order was not included. This is why we were initially talking about doing an amendment this year, because the expense piece was lacking, and we wanted to make sure it was crystal clear before we put the order before you for a vote. The way that we determined the best way by meeting with finance and auditing was to put that language in there of the additional $100,000 with board approval in case there were other capital expenses that came up. So I hope that clarifies things.
Councilor Ianieri.
All right, while we're on the topic, let me just ask the question back at you. Doesn't the board have to make the approval first before it even comes back to us? I think so. Do they not?
The approval for,
Up to $100,000. I don't think the mayor just makes it. I think it has to go through the parking authority. They're a separate entity.
I'll have to double check the answer on that, but
I mean, maybe Mr. Klassen could.
So, you're both right. I think what Mr. Atkinson is discussing and the deliberations that he and my team and the auditing folks have had is providing the ability for the parking authority with the okay. So you're just of the parking authority to expend that extra money. So what we're asking you to do is to set the framework, and then the parking authority would still have the ability to approve that additional expense for capital or not. This stems from, we've had this discussion during the budget hearings, an attempt to really clarify the spending practices of the parking authority. They have always raised sufficient money to fund their own operations and continue to do so. What we've tried to do the last couple of years is take the expenses from the revolving fund and make sure that those votes came before the council, so both you and the public had the opportunity to be aware of that spending. And so as we've really changed the way that the votes occur, we're trying to do that in the best way possible. And so this latest amendment, I think, is just the next step in having a more transparent process and trying to ensure that they can do the business that they need to do. And luckily for the general fund, they can fund their capital expenses on their own. So we're trying to provide a framework in which they can do that, have the parking authority be able to exercise their authority, but have it in a way so that it streamlines it. So they have the authority up to an extra $100,000 that we're contemplating here, but that stays as their maximum appropriation without further council action.
I just feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that the full discussion's been had with the parking authority, and I don't know if that's happened yet. Has it? Do they know that what you're looking for, or are we just spitting it out that this is just what you want to do?
no, the board has not been apprised of
Right.
this.
See, that's what I'm not too happy with, to be truthful with you. I would rather see us accept what's before us this evening, and then you be able to go back and have discussion with them, and then you'd come back and ask us, just like we tell any department, you know what I mean, to get the appropriation back through us with discussion you'd have with the mayor. And I think that would happen, you know what I'm saying, but I just don't want to do something that they're not privy to. I don't think it's, I think we're just jumping ahead, and I don't, that's my feeling. I may be wrong, but I leave that up to how the council feels, but I just think we should act on what's before us and then go back and you have discussion with the authority. I mean, I don't think it's something that will be denied. I just want to see it back that way, you know what I mean? I mean, that's the way I feel about it, but that's all I have to say, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Lally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councilor Neary, how would you consider tabling this and then the new item that comes in, putting some sort of amendment or stipulation on that it only kicks in once the board approves it?
Well, my opinion, I just don't want to see us table it and act that way, to be truthful with you, because I think it's clear in what, I understand what we're trying to do, and even what Mr. Clarkson's explaining, even what Eric has as well. But I just think that they are the board, and they need to know just what's happening, not know that discussion was had in back of them. I don't think it's the right thing to do. That's the way I feel about it. And I don't think it's going to mix anybody up or hold anybody up. Am I right? I mean, of anything that you're trying to do, I don't think.
The only thing that is we wanted to get it done for this fiscal year because there's a deadline of June 30th. So we can reach out to our board tomorrow morning to make them aware of what's going on.
Then I don't like using the word table, because then you get untabled, then maybe what we do is postpone this until, no, we can't, we can't.
Well,
Well,
if I may, why don't we
When they have an amendment ready?
why don't we move to approve, and then when we meet next week with the new item also on the agenda, we will hopefully have some sort of feedback from the board, and the council can decide the appropriate action.
I think it'll make you look good with them as well, is what you're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to say here, you know? Again, I don't be repetitive, I don't think the mayor's gonna say no. I don't think that's gonna happen. You know what I mean? So that's the way I'd like to see it done, and you keep moving forward. It'll be handled.
And we're going to reach out to both the mayor and the board tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and it'll be handled, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, we're not gonna leave the parking authority out there to hang. That's not gonna happen. But I just think that's the cleaner way of doing it, so that's how I look at it.
Okay, so just to clarify, this could be recommended favorably.
Yes.
Then we will have a communication from the mayor relative to his wishes and also the parking authority's wishes regarding this, and then an amendment could be offered on June 28th at council, which is important because these revolving accounts are supposed to be approved prior to the start of the fiscal year in which they're to be operational. I know it's only a technicality, but, you know, we should do it right. So does that clarify everything? We recommend favorably, and we'll do the appropriate amendment on Monday, and, you know, legislative council and the mayor's office can decide how to proceed.
As long as we get something in the door by the end of the fiscal year, I think we're all right. If we need to make adjustments into the fiscal year, we have all year to do it. So I would, if everyone's all right, I would move to recommend this favorably.
Second.
I just want
Councilor
to
Ianieri.
I just want to make one comment. I know you will, as chair and as president, to make sure that it gets followed through as well, so that it gets into the mayor's office and comes out and doesn't get hung up somewhere.
You mean a nerdy person like me that researches everything? Yes,
I know you will. All right,
I will.
that's fine. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, on the motion to recommend favorably, all in favor? All opposed? Recommended favorably unanimously.
Thank you.
Anyone have anything this evening? Councilor Azak.
Thank you. Just a moment of council's recognition. I would like to remind everybody at home that this Friday night at 7 p.m., there's a movie night at D.W. Fields Park. It's at the gazebo side location off of Oak Street. The movie that's going to be showing is Disney's Pirate Fairy. So bring your blankets or a chair and enjoy a night out under the stars. So this Friday night, 7 p.m., D.W. Fields Park. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, councilors, I'm told that we will be in council chamber on the 28th. We should have all of our updates done. There is a dry run on Friday. Assistant Clerk Cruz is on top of that. And then for your calendar, after Monday, our next meeting will be FinCom on the 19th of July. So from the 28th of June to the 19th of July, catch your breath, reflect on the budget, what we accomplished, and we will be back at FinCom on that Monday. So if there's no further business, FinCom is adjourned.
Thank you.